How much should you pay into a whole life insurance policy, with your goal being maximum cash value? Should you pay in $50,000 per year, or should you only pay in $20,000 per year? We get this type of question quite a bit. Often the dollar amounts are different, but today's video is going to illustrate what option is best to go with and really what you should consider when trying to figure out exactly how much you'd like to fund a policy with per year. In today's video, we're going to look at a 45-year-old individual who is trying to figure out exactly how much he wants to pay in. A maximum of $50,000 per year, which will be a bit of a stretch for him, but he thinks he can hit it. Or does he go with the number that he feels is very comfortable, a $20,000 maximum? Now, how do you figure out what option is best for you? Because when it comes to a whole life insurance policy, what I'll add is if I pick option A or option B and I max fund both of them, so what I mean when I say that, if I take option A, I can pay in how much per year? A maximum of $50K per year with a minimum commitment of $5,000. So if I'm going to pay in that maximum dollar amount, $50K per year, the numbers will look good. I'll break even somewhere between years 4 and 5, high internal rate of return, everything will look fantastic. If I go with option B, where I've got a $20,000 maximum, a $2,000 minimum commitment, and I actually pay that $20K per year in, I'll see almost identical results from an actual return standpoint, isolating the internal rate of return. I'll see different dollar amounts because this option, I would have paid more money into it. However, if all things are equal from a ratio standpoint, so here I've got a 10% minimum premium, same thing over here, and then 90% toward that PU8 rider, I'm stuffing the cash value, I won't see much difference in terms of the actual internal rate of return or growth rate on these two options. So how do you pick the one that's best for you? Here's what I like to look at in this type of situation. We're going to take a look at option C, which is a policy, it's the same as option A actually. So option C is a policy where you can pay up to $50,000 per year. Let's assume you pick option A because you think you can hit 50K per year. You've got that $5,000 minimum commitment, but then something comes up, maybe cash flows just a little bit less than you anticipated, and the maximum you get into the policy on any given year is $20,000. What this means is that after you've had the policy for a couple years, you would look at it and say, you know what, Steve, if we could turn back the clocks, if we could go back in time, based on what I have actually paid into the policy, there's $20,000 per year, I wish I would have picked option B, because that policy had a lower premium. I would have had more cash value up front, more long term. It would have been a better option because my goal was to maximize cash value. So, seeing these options up front help people really refine their decision-making process. And what I'll add is if you add a 0 to this, it becomes even more so the case. A lot of people we work with that are looking between 200, is often between 300 and 500,000 per year, will go through this exercise, or I'll make it a point to take them through this exercise. Because when you look at a whole life insurance policy, I see two things happen a lot. Particularly with individuals paying in $50K per year or more, is they often look back and say, I wish I would have went with a larger policy from the start. Because if I had room to add more into a policy, especially when it's already beyond the initial expenses, man, I would have loved to have done that and not have to start all over with a new policy because I've already funded up to the MEC limit on my existing policy. We see that quite a bit. But then on the flip side, what I want to make sure we prevent is going too big on a policy. I don't want to pick option A and only pay in $20K per year, because if I do that, well, now I'm building that $50,000 policy and a $50K MEC limit. How I actually get that higher limit, that $50K, is with a higher death benefit, higher premium. What this means is that I have a higher cost associated with that policy. And it really only makes sense if I'm optimizing the cash value, if I'm max funding it at least the first year, or during a couple years of the policy. We're going to take a look at that as well. So the exercise we'll look at is exactly this. We're going to look at two policies, but option A, we'll look at two different funding scenarios, meaning what does it look like if I have the $50K max? One option I pay in $50K, the other option I pay in $20K, and compare them side by side. So when funding a policy, always keep this in mind. If $50K is your dollar amount, money can go where? Toward the premium or the PUA rider. What happens with premium dollars, specifically in the first year? Well, there we go. We've got a goose egg there. A very small percentage of the premium payment shows up in cash value. That's also what I'm initially committed to. So if I go with option A, I've got a $5,000 minimum commitment. I'm also billed for $5,000 per year. Whereas if I go with option B, I've got a $2,000 minimum commitment and I'm only billed for $2,000 per year. So let's take a look at the different scenarios. Option B, the minimum commitment is not a clean $2,000. It's closer to $2,500, but we still have it minimized, and you'll see everything we go through in this exercise. So let's begin here with option A on the far left. If we just isolate that, there we go. So isolating the option on the far left, what do we have here? $50K per year going into the policy for 5 years. Minimum payment, we've got $5,000 per year. Total payment, $50,000 per year. The total payment, this annual outlay, combines the base premium, term rider, PUAs, everything being shoveled into the policy. What's the worst year of a whole life insurance policy? The first year. I pay in $50K, I've got just about $42,000 in cash value. What's the best year of a whole life insurance policy? Well, it's every year after the first year. I'll see here, second year, I pay in a total of $50,000 again. I get just about my $50K back because I was at $41,700. If I got all of it back, I'd be at $91,700. $41,700 plus 50 would equal $91,700. I'm about $1,000 short, a little bit less. So I still took a hit in the second year. The reason why is because the overall expenses on the policy here are exceeding the earnings. However, the next year, I pay in $50 again. Finally starting to pick up the pace, and here, when I look at policy year 5, I've paid in $250,000, and I have $250,000. Death benefit of $900K gives me that MEC limit right here of $50,000. Okay, so let's continue on here and look at the next option. $20K per year going into a policy, but what do we see? We see a $5,000 minimum premium. So this is technically option C. I'm going backwards here, my apologies. But we've got option C, if we go back to the whiteboard, which is the policy where I can pay up to $50K per year. So same as option A here. These are the same policies, but the difference is what does it look like if I don't pay in $50K and if I only pay in $100K per year? I've got year 5 highlighted. That's a mistake because my break-even point is year 7. I'll correct that in a minute. Break even is when I have cash value equal to what I've paid into the policy. So 7 years in, I paid into it for 5 years, but my total out of pocket was $100K, and I see my cash value hit $100K by year 7. Pay nothing in after year 5. This individual did not want to pay anything in after 5 years, and there's the values over time. Look at the first year. So that minimum payment, $5K, which mainly consists of the base premium, that takes the biggest bite out of cash value. So I paid in $20, I've got $14,000 in cash value. Over here, I've got about $42,000 in cash value. If we crunch the numbers, I've got a greater percentage of my payment that shows up in cash value with option A compared here to option C. And the reason why is just of my total payment, what percentage is going toward the base, or the minimum premium, the base premium plus the term rider. Here it's 25%. Okay, so now let's progress on to option B, which here, my minimum is about $2,500. However, my total outlay is what? Still $20,000. Look at your death benefit too on the far right. Much lower. Kind of an oddball number, $360,000. And where we came up with that number, that gives us a MEC limit of guess what? Here we go, $20,000. Perfect. Break even on this one. Let's correct it, make it year 7. Perfect. So here's what I want to know. Isolating the first year, because this is what most people look at right out of the gates. You paid in $20,000. Over here, you paid in $20,000. We don't need to look at this example. First year, $14,000. Option to the right, $16,000. If this is you, here's how I would begin to refine my decision-making process. This option on the far right, the maximum I can pay is $20,000 per year. That's the max. So if I want to be able to pay more money into this particular option or this policy, I won't be able to do that. The only way I can get more money into a whole life insurance policy is if I take out another policy. Whether that's on me, a family member, whatever it might be, I do need to take out a new policy, which means I need to go through the startup costs again. Over here, if I pay in $20K initially, what's the difference? I've got about $2,000 less in cash value. This is the exact same product, by the way, but $2,000 less in cash value with this option compared to the option on the far right. And the main reason why has to do with that minimum payment. That base premium is higher in this example. So that's what I would look at first. Does that have a huge impact for your situation? The same is true if we add a 0 to this situation. We've got to look at it and make the determination for ourselves. Am I comfortable with that? Do I want access to that money right out of the gates, or do I not? As the years pass, here, year 5, you've paid in a total of 100K. You've got just about 100K, you're at 99,000. Versus here, you've paid in 100, you're at 94 and change. There's about a $5,000 difference there, a little bit more. Is that $5,000, is that a big impact to you as you look at everything side by side? Another way I like to look at it is if I isolate year 5, okay, I paid an extra $5,000, but what that gave me was the ability to add more money into the policy up to $50,000 per year. And I can do that beyond the 5th year as well. So in a sense, I'm paying for that extra window room. And if I throw more money in, then I'm glad I paid for it because I really see the benefits from a growth perspective. But let's look at the actual difference here. You can just look at a side by side. What's the total cash value difference? And this way I can see it. And we go through the full illustrations as well. This is the same company, same product, everything's identical. By age 70, there's a $17,000 difference. I paid in a total of 100 grand. That extra $17,000, the $17,000 less I'll have with this option, am I comfortable with that, considering the fact that I could have added more money into the policy? Those are the questions we like to progress through, and seeing this side by side really allows someone to decide for themselves. Of course, we'll talk through it with anyone as well, but it does help just seeing it side by side. Now, we mentioned that if you went with this option, the center one, where you could pay up to $50K per year, and you do hit $50K on some years, well, then it would make sense. So let's see exactly how much sense it will make if you don't pay in $50K every single year. So his plan again is to stop funding it after 5 years. What happens if he gets $50K in, but only some of the years? So we saw where it does not make sense potentially. If I bite off too much or more than I can chew, I go with the 20K, the 50K option. So here we have it right here. Center this a little bit more. Perfect. So on the left, this is the option we just considered. What can we see here? $5,000 minimum premium, $900,000 death benefit, which gives you a $50,000 MEC limit, meaning that's the maximum you can get into the policy. But here, you only pay in $20K per year, and there's your break-even point at year 7. So we know if we max fund it at $50K per year for 5 years, we hit the break-even at year 5, and it looks fantastic. What if, though, we only hit it a couple years? We can even look at it only in the first year, but here, a lot of people will look at this. If I max fund it years 1 and 2 only, so this is the exact same policy, death benefit, minimum premium, minimum payment, cash value first year, cash value, and the $50K for 5 years would be identical to that figure. But here is the difference. By year 3, you've paid in a total of $120. If I look by the 5th year, I've paid in a total of $160. And look at my break-even point. It's also year 5. First 2 years are really the most critical in my opinion. Sometimes it's just the first year, it depends on my age, but if someone's able to max fund a policy in the first and 2nd year, even if we take our foot all the way off the gas and paid in just the premium, sometimes even 0, we'll still see a break even right around year 5, often between 5 and 6 if I'm paying in 0. But my point is if one is able to max fund, particularly in the first 2 years of a policy, where those expenses are the heaviest, If we're max funding it, we're in a sense offsetting those expenses as much as we can. We're getting a lot of money into that PUA rider, and we put ourselves in a position where we see a very early break-even point. If life happens and I can't pay, the policy continues to compound and the numbers look great. But overall, this just demonstrates different options, all the same policy here. And it's an exercise that has helped a lot of people select the option that they feel is best for them, because it can be tough when you're trying to figure out that perfect dollar amount. We get this question all the time, and a lot of times we'll ask the question for individuals we work with. I try and do that a lot, because if someone's torn between how much they want to pay in, get a lot of entrepreneurs that say, hey, I really want to stretch a bit because when I've done that in my business, things have gone well. When I set goals kind of out of reach and then I've been able to hit them, I'd like to do with the same policy. I'd like to do the same with the policy, I should say. So you can do that. However, what happens if I really stretch or if I set that goal way out there and I don't hit it? Like, that's what I just want to know up front, because with the policy, by setting that goal further, I'm making the expenses a bit higher. So if I never reach that goal, that's where it can hurt me. So if I can just see it up front, what ends up happening often is someone looks at it and says, okay, I'm comfortable with the additional costs because I think I'm going to be able to max fund it at least 1 year, probably 2 years, so I'm going to do it. Or someone looks at it and says, you know what? I might be able to do it, but it's really a risk. I'd rather max fund it to start, and let me just do that for 5 years. And then after that, if I find myself really wanting to pay in more, then I'll take out a new policy. And I'm aware of the additional expenses or the new expenses, but I had the awareness up front, and I could make an informed decision. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I had a ton of fun with this because it's something we deal with quite a bit. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out or leave them below. I do check the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more. And as always, I hope this helps. Thanks so much. Hey guys, Steve Parisi here. If you enjoyed the content you just saw, please subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for future videos. If you'd like more information or to see some custom policies for yourself, feel free to call or email our offices at the contact information below.